In this tutorial, we are covering external domains remote authentication. Let's take a look at some of the prerequisites. You should have an ACM Enterprise running the latest versions, always advisable, and you can find available at avigilon.com support, and under that just look for the ACM section to download the latest updates. Domain controller, Active Directory information, so you're certainly going to need to do that. The IP address of that Active Directory, the domain name, a valid domain certificate is highly recommended. And throughout this process, it's advisable that you have the end user IT team support, also is very important. So let's go ahead and take a look in ACM and see how that configuration is done. Here we are in ACM. I'm going to go ahead and log it in. For this demonstration, I'm just using a standard admin account. It's going to log into the box. Now, the first thing I need to do, and I always like to do, is go into the appliance and check for the license and version that I'm running. At the present moment, I'm running the latest firmware in this system. Okay? Once you do that, there is no extra license required to connect with the external system with an Active Directory for remote authentication. So it's two separate things. So one is that, and the other one is if you want to bring users from Active Directory into ACM, so create a collaboration to transfer users into ACM, then you need what is called an Identity LDAP POL license. So you do require this other license here. But once again, for remote authentication, where you're going to use an Active Directory domain name and password to authenticate in ACM, no extra licenses are required. The standard Enterprise Edition will have everything that you need. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a look. This is how we do it. So you go over here first under the Setup and Settings, and then from there go to System Settings. All right, first thing we need to do here is go to External Domains and create a connection with that external domain Active Directory. So I'm going to go click here, add new one, put the name of the external domain. In my case, I already have that. I've created that before, so I'm going to go ahead and just add the name and then the IP address of that server. I'm going to go ahead and hit Add. There's that button right here. That creates the connection. And now it's an important part that you need to validate this certificate. So in this case, I don't have a proper certificate in my ACM that's under this domain. So this would never properly trust the system. But just for the purpose of a demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you do that. So you click in this Validate Certificate, and then a certificate comes up, and then you want to just set if you denied or trust. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and trust it. And if you have a proper certificate with the domain that you're trying to authenticate, right, you will see a green trusted icon in here. You can ask our tech support to assist you adding a end user certificate into the ACM server, and that will validate this connection. Highly recommend that you do this, so then the communication between ACM and the domain controller is encrypted, right? It's trusted, okay? So this is the first step. So after that, once you do this, don't forget to click Save, okay? So you click Save here, and now it creates that domain, okay? Next step, we're going to go to Remote Authentication, and this is the one that ACM is going to use. So first I create external domain, put your domain in there, and then I'm going to go over here and just validate that. So I should just drop this down, get the domain. Default server, you can put the IP address. I already had it, so this is why the IP showed up. So you can just go ahead and type the IP address of that server. If you have a valid certificate, you want to check that. I don't have in this system. Again, this is just a demo system, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this alone. Again, highly recommended. Please do the validate certificate. Make sure that you involve the end user IT team and also our Vigilant tech support to add a valid certificate in your ACM system. Okay, so once I do this, I'm going to go ahead and click Save here. And this part of the configuration is done. So now I just have to go under the identities, look for that particular identity that I want to give access. So I just created one here. I'm going to go ahead and use Donald Duck. And here comes Donald. You can add all the information you want for that user, photo and everything else, right? Roles, don't forget that, right? So if it's a user that's going to gain access to ACM, they will need to have a role that provide that type of access. So I created one called sales, or I could use a super user. Be careful with this one though. But just create whatever that level of permission that person needs to access ACM. And then here under the identities tab, if you scroll down, you'll see something called account information. Normally what you would do is locally you can create a login name. So you can put a login name in here and just add a password, okay? If you want to authenticate with a domain, it says right here, remote authentication, check that. Notice that this is now changes, okay? No longer ask you to put a password. And then you add the domain. This is the part that we just created before. So go ahead and click that. A couple of things here. So I usually suggest customers just go ahead and enter the name, the authentication name for your user in here. So you have to enter what is the login name they will be allowed to use. So we enter that, and also in remote authentication, okay? So you do that. Very well. Once you have that, you're going to notice that there's something here called allow remote access. Usually customers think that they need to check this to allow this user to have remote authentication. This is not true. So what this is used for is to allow a particular user account to provide access to the ACM database. So you could use then an external application, for example, an LDAP administration tool, and using the credentials that you would put in here, right, without the remote authentication, it will be a standard credentials in here. With the allow remote access checked, now that application could utilize the username and password to access the ACM database and read information from it. So normally what you want to do is just leave this unchecked, okay? Now that you have this, you'll go ahead and just click save. So again, I went here and did remote authentication. I checked that, I select the domain. So if you have multiple domains, all you have to do under the system as administration, just enter all the domains that you need, and then if there is different users authenticating in different domains, all you have to do is just pick the right domain, enter their login information here, what is the login that you normally use in the computer, and then just hit save. Okay, now that I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and log out and just show you how I can now go back and log in using Donald. I already have that, his name already saved in my browser. I'm going to go ahead and do that and just enter the password. Click OK, and there you are. Now I'm logged in into that system, and you can see here I'm logged in using that name. So this login now follows all the rules that you have into your Active Directory for type of password, extension of it, types of characters that are allowed, and so on, right? So if you want to enforce that, we strongly suggest that you use this type of link, domain authentication, with ACM into Active Directory, with Active Directory, and then that will provide you that extra security, okay? Very well. This is it for this video.